Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here, and today we're reviewing for you Scott Pilgrim EX on the Nintendo Switch 2. This review was originally written by the wonderful Ken Talbot and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Riding the cult success of Edgar Wright's cinematic adaptation whilst keeping the aesthetic and charm of Brian Lee O'Malley's source material, Ubisoft's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World game was a smash hit at launch. This gloriously retro co-op brawler still holds up today. Its 16-bit charm remains well worth your time, especially with the content-packed Complete Edition released on Switch back in 2021. Scott Pilgrim EX is a bit of a different beast from its predecessor. It remains a gorgeously animated pixel action game, but instead of retelling Scott's ex-battling odyssey, it's a continuation of the Netflix series Scott Pilgrim Takes Off and features an original story written by O'Malley. In place of the episodic destruction of Ramona's former lovers, EX sends Scott and friends into battle against rival gangs and interdimensional threats across the streets of Toronto. His bandmates have gone missing, so he must recruit both friends and former enemies to help track down his kidnapped crew. Along the way, he'll have to contend with a Mega Man X crossed with Metal Sonic like Metal Scott, which is nothing less than what I would expect from this series. Moving away from Ubisoft, EX is developed by Tribute Games, now synonymous with high-quality scrolling beat-em-ups thanks to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge and the recent Marvel Cosmic Invasion. The studio fully flexes its strengths here. There really is nobody making retro brawlers as well as Tribute right now. EX is a bubblegum explosion of pixels and chiptune energy. It's a complete delight for fans of the retro beat-em-up and video games as a whole. The semi-free roam format is the only minor stumble in what is a lovingly crafted ode to geek culture. With stellar work from the artist Paul Robertson, EX preserves the iconic look of Scott Pilgrim. Chunky character sprites look lifted straight from the comic, brought to life with fluid, expressive animation. There are Easter eggs in every frame and set piece, visual nods in every character's moveset. The attention to detail is staggering at times. The intricate design of backgrounds can somewhat hinder the admittedly very rare platforming, but these instances are hardly common. Yet, while endlessly referencing other titles, Scott Pilgrim EX doesn't forget to be its own thing. Taking a different approach to progression than other games of its ilk, EX features a free roaming design in which traditional stages branch off from a main hub map. The streets of Toronto are littered with dimensional rifts that lead to themed levels, culminating in an often absurd boss fight, dinosaurs, babies piloting robot hamburgers, that sort of thing. The main story has you rescue bandmates, collect items, and in a nod to Ocarina of Time, unlock new rift-opening musical riffs. In between stages, you can visit a selection of shops that sell power-ups, cosmetics, and accessories to boost your stats. We're not gonna lie, it's a bit disorientating at first. In a game that has all the hallmarks of a belt scroller, having to keep checking your map for your next objective can be a little bit jarring. It's also not hard to get a little bit lost before you get used to the layout of the hub. There's a fair bit to do outside of the rift stages as well, like side quests and combat challenges, but backtracking through Toronto can get a little tedious. Enemies spawn out of every nook and cranny on pretty much every screen, so wandering the same areas isn't too much of a slog, but it can get a little bit tired. Fortunately, this boredom never lasts long because there's always something on the next screen to amuse and entertain. At around 4 or 5 hours, it's by no means a lengthy game, but the longevity will come from revisiting stages either solo or with friends, uncovering secrets and trying out different characters. There are 7 playable fighters from the start. Each comes with a generous moveset packed with unique attacks, and every character feels valuable and useful in a fight. Scott stands out as a true all-rounder. His attacks have some fun additions, including a Tatsumaki Senpu Kyaku kick that is oh so satisfying to use against aerial enemies. Robot 01, which was my personal favorite character to play as, is basically a walking nuke. He throws out huge screen-filling attacks that match perfectly with his over-the-top anime archetype. If you're after a more straightforward brawler, Lucas Lee fits the bill. He's an enjoyable vanilla bruiser who gets the job done without any unnecessary flashy stuff. Mixing and matching these characters in co-op is incredibly incredibly enjoyable, with room for up to 4 people, both local and online. All characters have a base set of stats that can be upgraded across the campaign, alongside custom slots for items that add further buffs. There's also a themed set of assist abilities that can be freely swapped between characters, which is a really nice touch. Every single one of the assists is fun to use, although some are definitely a little bit better than others. The screen can get chaotic when mobs of enemies are being trampled by a screaming sex-bomb fan assist or caught in one of Robot 01's explosive AoE attacks. Even with all that going on, performance stability remains very, very good, which is impressive, but at the same time, it is just a 2D game. Games like this always feel warm and fuzzy on a handheld screen, and Scott Pilgrim EX looks great undocked. The crisp chiptune beats feel natural pumping out of the console speakers, which only adds to the charm. It's easy to get retro fatigue when every month brings with it another wave of throwbacks. Scott Pilgrim EX, however, is a reminder of why this genre became so popular in the first place. The spirit and execution come together in a way that feels fresh rather than forced. There's real pick up and play value here, whether you're going solo or just messing about with friends, and you don't even need to be a fan of Scott Pilgrim to enjoy it. After all, getting a bunch of friends together to battle the forces of evil with martial arts and giant turnips is about as universal as it gets. Scott Pilgrim EX, you're getting a 9 out of 10 from us. Now that we've done away with the official stuff, that means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and I am a big Scott Pilgrim fan, so there was a lot here for me to really love. One of my favorite things was an instance where you were able to essentially, I mean, it's an interdimensional rift, so I don't know if it's going back in time or what, but you go back to Scott's high school where he was there with Kim and everything, and if you know Scott Pilgrim, you'll know the whole thing about winning Kim's heart and Simon Lee and all that sort of thing, and so it was really cool to be able to play through that in a way that felt, well, natural given the situation. At first, I was a little bit worried that the sort of variety of enemies was going to be a bit thin, because, sort of there are 3 factions, there are the robots, the vegans, and the demons, and it just sort of felt like, is it going to be the same guys over and over again? Because that's the sense you get as you're going through the streets of Toronto to begin with. But the sort of the cast of enemies starts to expand pretty rapidly, and that was thankfully never an issue. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and some of those enemies can get in the bin though. I don't know what it's called. It's come up on screen, but I'm too busy trying to, well, not run away from it, but just, I don't know. It's just this horrible sort of like mage thing that disappears and reappears and shoots a fireball at you. I don't know whether it's just a me thing, but I found those things absolutely infuriating, and I could not for the life of me consistently get them down. I just had to wait until they spawned in the correct position and wail on them. I know I've got ranged attacks and stuff like that, but they can be quite precise. I don't know. Maybe Robot 01's just not suited to taking them out, but oh my god, it was annoying. The bosses are really cool as well. I love all the little sort of nods to other franchises. Like they do a really subtle, it's not even a nod, it's just direct reference to Castlevania. It's called Castlevania in this instance. Like, I don't know how much more obvious you can get. I will say, though, is that some of the bosses have rather a large difficulty spike attached to them. Most of them are absolutely fine, but some of them you end up having to do sort of like, I can only think of the term gauntlet after playing so much Hollow Knight and Silksong. But you have like a gauntlet of normal enemies and then you take on the boss, that typical sort of thing. And you end up getting whittled down by the gauntlet, and then the boss comes out and it's like, I've barely got any health left, and so you have to be really quite cautious and clever. And I know that's probably the point, but when you're playing solo especially, it can be quite punishing. I don't mind that personally. I don't mind a game being difficult. You can always change the difficulty, which will give you a bit of an edge. I was playing on hard to begin with, and I did have to turn it down to normal to do a boss, I'm sorry. But it's just something to bear in mind if you're playing solo. The game broadly feels like it's more designed for multiplayer. It's still perfectly good in single player, and I still recommend it, but that's just something to consider, It might be a little bit, a little bit overwhelming at times, but you can do it. I believe in you. All in all, really good game. Really pleased to see Scott Pilgrim come back. There's so much for the fans here, and just as a game, it's just a bloody good brawler.
Oh.